She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelicalish.
Oh my goodness. How are you? With the iPad, I can't do anything smooth on this. It's all abrupt. So here we are.
Hey. We are live. And for the first time since I've been doing the show with you for an entire 4, maybe 5 times, like we had like people like going, hey, when are you starting? Like, come on. You know, like I feel like people are, I don't know, pounding on the door, like, let us in and let's start ish this week. So I'm feeling very loved at the moment. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you,
Alex.
Let us
know where you're joining from. Alex from Brisbane in Australia. And we're going to want some input from you all as we're talking tonight about reclaiming traumatic spaces. And we want to know how you've been working through reclaiming places where you've had trauma in your life, whether spiritually, physically, or otherwise. So we'll be talking about that. Sherry from Saskatchewan, Richard from Kellogg, Minnesota. This is cool.
Very cool. And Paul, tonight you are in
Springfield, Mo. I'm actually in a little town called Ozark, Mo, just outside of Springfield. We drove here from Memphis today. And by the way, we're going to talk about the Obamas and what their speeches last night represented to us spiritually in the political realm, rather than just bitching about politics. We want to see what is happening here, and we'll tell you what's been inspiring us, and that's kind of our rundown of the show. But yeah, we drove from Memphis, and I want to tell people from Memphis, like, I'm so sorry. It's not really an apology for me, but I had so many people tell me like, oh, Memphis is terrible. If you step out of the car in Memphis, you're dead. You know, it's the worst. They're going to kidnap you on Beale Street. And I didn't find Memphis to be that way in the slightest.
Not once. Did you? Yeah. Well, okay. So I can relate to this so very much because as a person who's lived and worked in Fresno, California for now, whatever, since 1987, I can't even do that math. It's so long. And being active in local government, economic development, and like, I can't tell you for the longest time, people were like that about Fresno. And even to this day, people living in certain parts of our town up north will be like, what? You're going south of Herndon, south of Shaw Center? And I'm like, what? Like, you know, is it true you're going to see people who are like really poor and living in very disinvested neighborhoods? Yeah. Like, that's not a crime, you know, like these people love their kids. They love life too. And anyway, but when that sets in, that tone of it isn't safe here, it is very hard to chase it out. Yeah. Fresno and Memphis are often cohorted in national community development circles. And so anyway, I feel a very kindred spirit because I've literally been there, but also our two cities often kind of get paired up in various cool things. And I'm sorry to hear that people are saying those kinds of things. And was it people from like outside of Memphis or Memphisans? Is it Memphisites? Memphisians?
Memphisians. I think that Memphisians. Memphisians, yes.
Was it Memphisians saying this about their own town or people outside of Memphis?
Well, one friend of mine said she grew up in Memphis and had parents who lived here for a long time, and it's just horrible. You know, you can't go anywhere. It was, so no, not from Memphisians themselves, okay, but a lot of people outside. But in fact, I asked this question to every Uber driver I had while I was in Memphis, and like, is it dangerous here? They all were like, big eye roll. Like, I've lived here 15 years. A woman named Stephanie was driving Uber. She's like, I've lived here 15 years. I've been driving Uber for however long. She said, I pick up anybody in any neighborhood. I have never felt afraid. I have never felt in danger. She said, in 15 years, my car has been broken in twice since I lived here. And she said, I don't think that's unusual for an urban area.
Well, good for Stephanie for turning back that narrative, because I know in Fresno, it was actually, this was pre-Uber, but it was actually our cab drivers who the ones that were perpetuating it the most. Pick you up at the airport, drive you to a hotel, and the entire length of the drive tell you how awful the town is that you are now staying in. So good for Stephanie.
I don't think there's ever been a town that MFs itself as much as Fresno's do Fresno.
Okay, that's it. And now you have, I mean, gosh, you're in like so far 10 out of your 15 cities, I think. So
I know.
Now you're like kind of picking up a lot of
We only have 4 left. We're 11 out of 15. We have Springfield, Colorado Springs, Salt Lake City, and Vegas. I can't believe it. Only 4 left.
Are officially an experienced U.S. traveler.
For sure. And we're finally headed back west. As we turned from Birmingham to Memphis, we're heading back west.
Do you know what my grandmother would say, who was raised not far from where you are right now? She would say, never run a horse back to the barn. And I feel like you guys are like the horse running back to the barn. So, you know, people can explain what that means online. Don't run a horse back to the barn. Anyway.
Because I know this one because I had it happen to me once. You have to ride a horse parallel or like sort of in a diagonal to the barn, because if you point them straight to the barn, they'll just take off and you'll lose control.
You lose control. And you know what? After 30 years of marriage and 31 years of being in relationship with you, I have never once thought of you as a horseback rider.
I wasn't much, but I did ride once with some family friends, and they specifically said, ride out to that gate out there. And they said, then turn around. But they said that exact thing. Do not point the horse toward the barn. And I didn't quite catch it or understand it. And sure enough, I pointed the horse toward the barn and he took off. And he was really ready to go back to the barn. So yeah.
When this is the, you know, I was raised in the Southern Midwest. I was raised in Northwest Arkansas, not far from where you are now. These are the things you grow up knowing. So we're sharing the knowledge for all the good people who will listen to this episode of Ish. And to all of you, you're welcome. Now you know.
Dean joining us from Zoda, Manitoba, and Douglas, of course, from South Dakota.
I feel like we really have covered the colder climates on the globe for those of you who are chiming in. So, except, of course, Brisbane, Australia. But I think we got like a good northern sort of thing going with Manitoba and Minnesota, Saskatchewan.
Today is the first day we've had really nice weather on this trip. It has been hotter than hell all the way, but today we have beautiful weather.
Well, and I don't know if, you know, gosh, it's like all these heat domes hit at one. And I know there were like separate domes, I'm assuming, separate regional climates, whatever. But it was like hot as hell everywhere. It was disgusting here, 115. I've never seen it get that hot. But do you know how wonderful it is in Central California right now? It's going to be like in the 80s this weekend. And it is a dry heat. And it will be like so gorgeous in the mornings and the evening those days. So I'm excited.
All right. So we're going to talk about reclaiming traumatic spaces. Would love for our commenters to let us know how they have gone about claiming either spiritual or physical or relational spaces. I do want to share one amazing story from the road. We were in Memphis last night, as I said. We are always putting it out there that we still need help with some housing in Colorado Springs and Salt Lake City. And so we get a message today. Rocky, who produced the 1946 movie, she gets a message today from a woman who said, I live with an extremely unaffirming husband. She said, I was absolutely stunned that I was able to talk him into going to see my presentation, 1946, the movie. She said, I was sure that at any moment he was going to get up and walk out. And she said, he didn't really say much after the film, but he was very kind to people walking out. And she was like, okay, what's going on here? And then this morning, they get up for breakfast and he tells her, we should pay for their housing in Colorado Springs.
Oh
We should pay
my
we should
gosh.
pay for their housing. And sure enough,
What?
they are they're sponsoring our housing in Colorado
Oh, and
Springs.
this was last night at the Memphis show, you said?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
that is so amazing.
You told me you had a good story to tell, but you weren't going to tell me till we were on the air. And
Yeah, I wanted to get that reaction.
that is so special. Uh Golly gee, okay. Worth it, Memphis. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um,
Oh, one more thing about Memphis too, by the way. Do you remember the movie The Firm with Tom
oh
Cruise?
yeah, I love that movie.
So that happened in Memphis,
Yeah.
and we drove across the bridge today where you could see the island. Remember he takes the little tram to the island in the Mississippi River to
I don't
try to
remember
get
that part.
Yeah, he had to like get away for a little bit, so he took this little tram over there, and so we saw all of that, and I'm like, oh, that's right,
That
The
is really
Firm.
cool. Do you that's the one where he says to his wife, "I love you before I knew you"?
She said that to him.
She said that to him. Well, do you remember you said that to me? The
She said, I loved you before I even knew you. I loved the idea
of you. And
Yeah.
you wrote that to me the night before our dress rehearsal for our wedding. Yeah. Well, that's
What
really
a
neat.
what a romantic I am.
Indeed. What a romantic. All right. So listen, before we jump into kind of our main topic for today, I know you wanted to spend a minute on just reflecting on the what's going on at the DNC. And of course, we heard from the former First Lady and the former president last night. And just wondering
That after we jumped into the main topic.
Oh, you want to do that after? Okay.
Yeah, let's do that after.
Okay. Well, then here's what I'm anxious to hear, and for others too as well. I feel like our stream is because we're on different time zones, and it's like I'm working around the clock, and you're doing, whatever. I get my catch up on what has been happening in your life on these shows. So last week when we talked, you were in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear about that church or that experience, the whatever community group you were with. And then you went to Sarasota, Birmingham. Now you find yourself in Springfield. We're going to talk about that as a massive issue for you in your life and like how to reclaim stuff there. But catch us up on Jacksonville, Sarasota, and Birmingham.
Gosh, I can hardly remember which place is which from another. Jacksonville was nice. I'm trying to. Rocky and I got to go on the local NPR station, which was a beautiful facility. I have never been to Jacksonville, Florida before, and I was blown away by what a beautiful, beautiful city it is. We went to Sarasota. The church we were at was way cool. They are. Oh, and by the way, in Jacksonville, we were at a Southern Baptist church. Just so you know.
Yeah, that is worth repeating. Yeah. There are 2 churches out of the 15 that you're partnering with for this tour, 2 Southern Baptist affirming churches, and I was blown away when you said there was one, and then you said yes, and there's another one. I was like, stop it! I don't think this is real. So yeah. Say more about that.
Yeah, we were at an affirming Southern Baptist church last night in Memphis, which is shocking. And so that was wonderful. Jacksonville is beautiful. I was blown away by the architecture, but no place. So Sarasota was wonderful. There's a church that the young pastor took over for his father, and he's trying to transition the church into an affirming church, and it's been a real battle. They were even a little bit like, we're a little bit afraid your presentation, Paul, about Christian nationalism might cause some ripples. And we talked it through, and I'm like, hey, I don't want to hurt you guys. I'm willing to not do the presentation if that would help. And then after I did the presentation, they're like, oh, that was really gentle. You probably could have gone a little bit harder on us. And that church,
wonderful. that was like a charismatic church trying to pivot towards being affirming, which is also pretty unusual.
Yeah, the pastor and pastor's wife and I knew all the same people from Bethel and the Vineyard and all of that other stuff. So we had some lively conversations. And I finished with Birmingham. Man, I really loved Birmingham, Alabama. I feel weird saying these things, you know.
I've been telling you, like,
Yeah.
you've been hearing me say we got to go to Birmingham.
Boy, the old houses. First, I love brick buildings. I love brick houses with front porches. Just
Yes.
the houses are
Yes.
breathtaking.
People don't realize out in the West, like when you don't have weather, what you build buildings with, what you build houses with is very like as low cost material as possible, like stucco. And you don't understand, like when you come from a place where buildings are built to last and they have to withstand tornadoes, they have to withstand weather. And it's the beauty that like red brick or like more sturdy building, it's really stunning. So I think that's interesting. You notice that.
And our house, the Airbnb we were at, we're pretty sure was haunted. It was scary. It had a back stairs. It had a slave's, I shouldn't say slave. It had a worker's quarters in the back, and then it had a back entrance with its own set of stairs, so that the help could come into the house and go upstairs without being seen in the front room. It had a little portion of the front porch that was fenced in, so the mosquitoes couldn't get in. And so that's the things I'm really remembering a lot from my childhood is how loud the bugs are here.
Yes.
My God, the bugs
Yes.
are loud.
You people who live in the Midwest and the Northeast and the South, you don't realize it till you're not there, but you are like the decibel level of just bugs at night is, I don't know, like probably like 10. I mean, it is deafening. And you don't find that out West. It's like very quiet, you know, at night.
Remembering that, and I'm getting to eat fried okra and fried green tomatoes, which I love. And everybody wants to give me catfish, which I hate. So
I hear you on that. Do they have fried okra at McDonald's in the South?
no, they do not.
Okay.
They do not. But they do everywhere else, and sweet tea everywhere. Everywhere is sweet tea.
Which you don't like sweet tea.
Which I don't like sweet tea either. So yeah, that's been an interesting part of the journey. But the food has been great. The people have been great, and the events we're doing, we are truly impacting people. And every night, every other night, pretty much, we do an event, and I get to talk to people who say, wow, thank you for telling me I'm okay, for being a pastor who says I'm okay, and I'm not an abomination to God. And that is truly amazing.
That's really awesome. Are you feeling like, I mean, can you feel that sense of liberation, like in your own spirit and self as you're connecting with people and learning about their liberation?
I don't know if I would say that. Sometimes we're so into the details of like, oh, we got to get up tomorrow, pack up and go, repack, unpack, crash, die, burn, and then go to the next place. I don't get to have a lot of introspection time, even as we're driving in the RV. It doesn't feel free to that. But I think when I have a chance to get home and really sit down and think about what's happened, I probably will break down and have a really good cry over all the people that I've encountered.
I hope you are at least just like writing down notes so that you can look back and remember, even if you're not like having emotional connection with those words. Hopefully you're just like logging things that you need to go back and reflect on.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Okay. Well, so that's a pretty packed week. And now here you are in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, by the way, and we did go to a drag show in Birmingham that's been going on for like 11 years or something in Birmingham, and it was a hoot. I had a really good time, and you walk away from it and go, what is everybody pissed off about?
Yeah.
Like, it's fun. And actually, some of the performers were truly athletically gifted and amazing in what they did. But it was a really fun time, and the crowd had a really great time. So
do you know
what is all the furor about crazy people? Come on.
I'm going to say this as if it's a shocking statement, and you're going to be like, yeah, no shit, Ashley. Do you know I have never been to a drag show?
I think it's only the second time I've ever been to a drag show too. So I'm trying to think of when the other one was. I can kind of picture it in my head, but yeah, I haven't been to a lot of drag shows either. But
well, so our daughter like swears by RuPaul's Drag. What's the name of the TV show? RuPaul's Drag
Race, I think.
Drag Race. So okay, and she keeps telling me because she knows I kind of like reality TV, LOL, like kind of a lot. And she's like, "Mom, you'd love the show. You'd love the show." So I'm going to commit to watching it at the very least, and then next chance I get.
For many of our commenters, have you been to a drag show? What was your thoughts on it? There's also a good reality show called We Are Here, where these drag queens go across the country putting on drag shows and really and helping people in less affirming communities get some affirmation.
Yeah,
and it's really beautiful.
We saw in our little hometown here in Fresno, the organization I work for sponsored a film contest, and we had a local documentarian do a 5-minute short, a mini doc on this drag queen story time, where queens will read children's books. You know, I guess and this was a couple years ago. I guess this is a pretty common thing. And it was really sweet, really cute, and really great little film. And then, yeah, we had one of our local nonprofits. In fact, our zoo sponsored like drag queen story time last year, and that created a lot of furor. Maybe it's a couple years ago. A lot of people upset about that. Not the animals at the zoo.
I posted the video of the drag time story hour video that you all had for your event, and I got so much ridiculous pushback from Christians. That was,
you mean back when we like a few years ago?
Yeah, the one with our daughter's young friend who like interviewed the drag queens, and it's just so crazy that it means so much to people, and it's just the demonization of people groups. It's for political purposes demonizing human beings, and it's terrible. So Douglas in our comments here in the show says he has dressed in drag for Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is a very fun movie, and he says, does that count? And yes, Douglas, dressing up as I can't remember the name of the character now, that the character in drag in Rocky Horror, or one of the dancers, is absolutely you can count that as a drag show, I guess.
Okay, one last question on what's happened this last week, and then we're going to talk about where you're at right now and what's happening there tomorrow. Best meal that you ate in the last week?
Oh, goodness. We've had so many.
You can't say the Dusty Pelican because that was last week. You have to say something else.
Pelican. Oh, Rusty Pelican. Since the Rusty Pelican. Oh, my goodness. What have I had? Gosh, it all kind of runs together now. What is the best meal that I had? We ate it at a barbecue place in Birmingham that I had some barbecue pork quesadillas that were fabulous.
Ooh.
With fried okra. And so here's the crazy thing. And they, you know how you get bread at the start of a meal. Well, their bread is just, they brought this plate and it had like 4 slices of white bread, just white bread, not toasted,
like nothing. Wonder Bread, just on the plate. I know that happens. Those
with
of
barbecue
you...
sauce on the side, and our friends were like, "Yeah, you put it on there and you sop it up." You know, we say you sop it up. You know.
Well, I remember last time I was in Kansas City, I went to a really great barbecue place, you know, down home and like family owned, and like all like basically just you walk in, it's just pit everywhere, pit smell. It was great, barbecue pit. And yeah, they just put
pit smell. Pit smell is not a good term.
I felt I needed to clarify barbecue pit. But but I think it was like a thicker white bread. No butter, no nothing. They just like put this bread. Like y'all from the South are going to have to remind. When I was growing up in that part of the country, I don't remember that. So I don't know what that's about.
I thought they would bring like a Texas toast or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, it was just white bread and some barbecue sauce. And I did not find that to be particularly appealing, but the quesadillas and the fried okra were fabulous. Oh, we did eat at a place called Hattie B's. We had it as takeout. Yeah, no, I'll go with the Birmingham. It was called
Barbecue.
Dreamland Barbecue. Yeah,
Okay.
that's been the best meal. So now I'm in Springfield.
Okay. So here
And
you are.
so you do you remember you grew up in Arkansas much of your young life. I grew up in southwestern Missouri. Do you remember driving on the 2-lane highways with just trees on every side of the road?
Well, yes, because we lived in the northwest corner of Arkansas, and every trip we took was like we would go to Tulsa because that was where my mom's family was, and it was just like this straight shot, like 2 hours to the west, and that is it was like a toll road, and that like just open land, very lush, tree line comes right up to the road, oftentimes, but not always. And when you sent me the video today, I'm like, yeah, like every highway I ever drove on as a kid, that's what it looked like.
So we're driving through northern Arkansas. We got about halfway into Missouri and then cut up into Missouri. It reminded me of every trip we ever took to Silver Dollar City or to see the Passion Play down in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, where the Nazi guy built the big statue of Jesus. And I have to say, I started getting a little bit sick to my stomach. I haven't been back here in decades. And on that drive, I almost can't even enunciate, and I have DID. I think some of my parts were just like, oh my God, what are we doing? Why are we back here? And then we get to the Airbnb where we are, which is very nice. And it's a farmhouse. There's a barn and a shed and a tornado. I can't remember what the thing is called that you use as a tornado shelter. It just looks so much like my grandparents' house that we used to go to in Kansas. And I honestly, I'll just be vulnerable. I'm struggling with it all. My system is really struggling to be here. And part of the reason this is on our tour, I think, because Rocky, who sort of designed it all, was like, hey, let's go back to Springfield and reclaim it. I went to college here for a semester. I at a school called Evangelical which is the Assemblies of God liberal arts college. I think there's like 4 Bible colleges in Springfield, and this is the headquarters of the Assemblies of God, the church I grew up in. And I got kicked out of Evangel for, which is not hard to do because Evangel had like, you can't dance, you can't have long hair, you have to go to church on Sunday or you get in trouble. I mean, it was crazy. I got in trouble for getting a fraudulent eating pass in the dorm lunchroom. But then ultimately, what sealed my fate was the dean of the school telling me, "I'm not so concerned that you're a thief as that that your soul may be going to hell." And I turned to him and said, "Tell you what, why don't you go to hell?" And that was it for me at Evangel. So I want to reclaim all of this, but so far I'm trying to feel the feels and the pain of course there was also childhood household trauma in all of this, and so yeah, it's been a little bit of a tough revisit to southwestern Missouri.
Yeah. And I know you're showing up after being on the road for 20 days. You're exhausted. I have been low key worried about what this experience might be like. And I know you're a little bit in and out there. So, yeah, it's a pretty poignant moment, I think, in the trip for your journey, both with 1946 and your personal journey. I am curious. This is a DID question for those of you listening at home who may not know what it is. We'll talk about that on another day. But when you reflect back on telling the dean to go to hell, do you know which part that was? That was like showing up and like, tell you what, asshole. I mean,
yeah, I think that would have to be my Johnny part.
Yeah.
The Paul part, that's kind of the mostly front-facing part, would never be that disrespectful to authority. Another part, Johnny's our justice part that shows up when he feels like there's this massive injustice happening. And so I assume, and he can be pretty cutting. So I'm sure that was the part that showed up. I would love anybody, you know, in the comments, say, how have you reclaimed some spiritual space? Because I'm trying to think of, and thank you for sending the love there, Sherry. I think, you know, kind of my strategy at this point is to talk about it with you and with you all that are listening in, and really feel the feels, feel what I'm feeling. And
yeah.
And I've been kind of typing down all of the moments I'm remembering from childhood, from being here, and then I'll start to parse through what those memories mean to us, to our system in that. So that's kind of my strategy right now.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you a few more questions about this? And while I do, yeah, those of you who are joining us live and may have insight, or, you know, when we say reclaiming traumatic spaces, that could be relational spaces, that could be physical places like Paul is experiencing right now with being in such a prominent community town that is headquarters to the denomination that was so impactful in Paul's life. I've got, like, probably I think about reclaiming Christianity, reclaiming faith. Like, what does faith look like in a kind of post-evangelical, post-deconstruction world? But anyway, so like, be thinking about that. Send us your comments. All right. So you're there in Springfield, and you're remembering, like, a lot of other communities that you all were living in, and like that all just kind of remind you of Springfield. Is there something particularly, I don't know, powerful or intense about the fact that the denomination is headquartered there? And are you planning to go visit the denominational headquarters?
I hadn't thought about it till just now. The headquarters are this big, tall blue building. We used to, and so, you know, it was always called the Big Blue Building, and we used to make jokes about Springfield being the Mecca of the Assemblies of God, and you had to bow down in the direction of the Big Blue Building 3 times a day. I don't think I'll visit the denomination. I am thinking I will go visit the campus of the school. For those of you who don't know, the Assemblies of God is a particularly onerous fundamentalist religion. We never thought of ourselves as fundamentalists. We used to talk about those fundamentalists, but I mean, literally, I grew up, you know, it has a huge emphasis on speaking in tongues. It has a huge emphasis on the rapture, that Jesus is going to come any moment, and you can backslide. You could lose your Christianity in a second. And if you lost your Christianity, the way I always described it was, if you were in a car and you saw an 18-wheeler about to T-bone you, and you knew you were going to die, and you said, "Oh, damn it," just before you got hit by the truck, you would get to the pearly gates, and St. Peter would be there, and he would say, "Oh man, you almost made it to heaven, but you said darn, and so now you're going to hell for eternity. Bummer." And that is the religion I grew up in. And I think about the men like the dean that I encountered in it, including my own father, and how, like, just cruel this religion was to young people, and traumatic. And yeah, it does. It gives me that rock in the pit of my stomach that just makes me want to, in some ways, kind of lash out, just like Johnny saying, "You go to hell."
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, as we have always, like, compared our experiences growing up, because I grew up in a pretty fundamentalist background, but the difference between the tradition I grew up in, Southern Baptist, which believed, I mean, if it's one thing I knew by age 3 or 4, I knew this, and that is that you could not lose your salvation. And then you grew up in oh, yes, you can. Everything else, besides speaking in tongues and not speaking in tongues, like, almost everything else is the same between these two denominations, particularly in the region. We grew up in the same region of the country and in these denominations. But the difference that it, I think, makes and made for me just the, like that little bit of a like, hey, you can't lose your salvation. God's grace is that big, like the difference of having that be like what filled my lungs with oxygen versus you could look the wrong way. You could do something and not even know it was a sin, and God will know, and then you're done. That is the most intense kind of performance orientation I can ever imagine. And all of that was being expressed through the institution of your spiritual authority and through the people of your personal authority.
And I was always taught, it's all about grace. It's all about grace, unmerited favor, all about grace. But then there was always this ... and you can't go to movies, and you can't dance, and don't have sex because it might make you want to dance together, and all of these crazy things, hair length, rock and roll, you can't listen to rock. I mean, it was, the whole religion was about what you can't do. And the book of Romans, I know many people have problems with the writings that we attribute to Paul in the Bible, but I love the book of Romans. And it literally says the law is not the answer to sin. It is the causer of sin. Like, having rules brings all new ways to sin. And that's all I learned growing up is rules, and more rules. But it was all grace. So I wonder, like, in the Southern Baptist today, and you wouldn't be as familiar today, obviously, but like, what if, as is happening to so many people who are on a deconstruction journey or whatever, but they've said the prayer and joined the Baptist church, but then found out they were queer, or found out they were a Democrat. Can they still go to heaven? That's the question.
Well, there's hope for the queer person, but obviously not the Democrat.
Not the Democrat.
I mean, let's be real. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a lot. And I appreciate Sherry's comment in the chat that think about something that is symbolic, whether it's taking a hot shower, as Sherry's suggesting, that's an interesting idea. Or like, I was thinking more like carve your initials in the building. I don't know.
I was thinking like find an empty space and like pee on the side of a building.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking like probably not nearly as elevated. But so that's a thought.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to be a matter of kind of doing parts inventory in here, finding out who's upset about it all, and seeing what we can release.
Yep.
What have
not
we
pee,
carried?
By the way, release not pee.
Although Tori in the comments is who I met in Birmingham.
No way.
Says yes, pee. So.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Lord. Yeah, I don't want to have to like get a bail bonds person for you in Springfield because you've defamed, a building of some sort. I don't think I'll know how to do that. But I was just thinking the very same thing when you said that. Is like, I think it's going to be really important for you to go inward and try to identify, maybe it is your Johnny part, but identify the places in you that had that shaming and condemning message from the dean. And like, it's not about the dean, right? It's not about the dean. It's about that part of you and those parts of you that now can have access to the love that you carry, and know that they don't have to carry that burden anymore.
Although we're still getting lots of votes in the comments here for the P, going P.
Okay.
Laura even says she'll send bail money.
Okay, well, as long as it's a team effort, then maybe we'll put you up to it. Peeing initials on the side of the building. I mean, there's anyway. All right. Well,
you're right, though. I think what reclaiming means to me is like pulling the parts of me back that are still attached there and saying, you don't get to hold this power over me anymore. And it's not forgiveness. I think sometimes we get hung up in like, oh, you have to forgive and forget. Father, forgive them. They didn't. I think that's really cruel to victims sometimes. But just being able to say, I take back my power. I don't need you to approve of me anymore. I approve of myself. And I think I'm thinking something along that lines. And maybe I even buy a little sage and burn it or something with me and just reclaim my power and send the rest of that experience to hell. Not the people to hell, but the experience they caused, and send it to hell.
Yeah. You're getting a lot of love here in the chat. People nervous and excited for you, and just encouraging your bravery. Yeah. And gosh, I wonder if there's something about, when I think about the people, I don't know how far back it goes, but the people who founded Evangel, or the people who founded the Assemblies of God, I find that so much of these institutions, it's like there's always a kernel of like, you know what, there was the glimpse or the kernel of some kind of expression of godly love, divine love, that just got manipulated, twisted, and distorted. It got politicized, and I mean that both in a electoral political way, but also in a just human political way, and it became corrupted. But almost like if you're like, hey, but there is an eternal truth here of love, and that is in fact what you stand for, and that is in fact far more powerful than the harmful and just the harm that's been perpetuated, and just kind of like turning that on its head.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to think about that. I do know that as freshmen, we were required to take a class called Essential Christianity that made many parents very angry, because it did challenge us to look at gray areas. What are gray areas?
That's
And
interesting.
that may have been the first time I ever had somebody saying like, oh, we can wrestle over some of these passages. So that would probably be the one redeeming thing. And it led me to move to California, which has led to so many other things in my life. So it led me to, I was thinking about it, because when I moved to California, I was using bad weather as an excuse to go out. But now maybe it was actually, I was running from this place that I have felt really passionate hatred towards for a long time. Felt badly that I felt that way, but now realizing that it was, trauma I was carrying that I wasn't even in touch with, that made me hate it. And so giving my parts to permission to feel that hatred, but start to say, okay, how do we not let it have that negative power over us?
One more Evangel College thread I want to pull here, and then I want to pivot and talk a little bit about the way I'm thinking of reclaiming the faith space in my journey. Isn't it true that Lisa Welchel, who played Blair on Facts of Life, went to Evangel College the same time you did?
I met Lisa Welchel at Evangel College. That is correct.
And years later, she was on Survivor.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, and Tootie from Facts of Life, who I think, Tootie was on Real Housewives Atlanta. Like, was it Atlanta or Potomac? Real Housewives of Atlanta years ago. So, these legacies, these Gen X actresses.
One other brush with celebrity story of Springfield, Missouri is I had a cousin that went to high school with Brad Pitt.
Oh my God, that lives in my mind.
Kickapoo High School, but Brad Pitt people kind of don't like Brad Pitt here anymore because he won't claim Springfield as his home anymore.
I got it. I mean, Cher doesn't claim Fresno, so the bitterness is real. I get it.
Yeah.
So, thinking about reclaiming faith or reclaiming spiritual connection, I don't know that I am. I don't know that I'm quite ready to say I'm feeling kind of this breakthrough, but I think I'm coming up on a spiritual breakthrough. So I don't want to jinx it by like putting words on it too quickly. but I think I'm just about to the point where I feel sort of free of the sort of the religious expectations, oppression, and even though I grew up in a similar environment where everyone would say it's not a religion and it's not performance based, but also it entirely was, and that created a lot of shame. Like I could never really access God unless I kind of went through my own version of what it like. Well, I gotta read the Bible. I gotta do it this. There was always this feeling of like you have to be perfect to approach God, even though everyone said that you didn't have to. So I'm kind of like feeling like letting enough go of that. And then, yeah, Tori's right in the chat. She's saying we practice that line all the time. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. And yet, anyway, so
here's the rules of the relationship.
That's right. And the expectations, and you have to look a certain way. You have to think a certain way. And you have to, you have to have an agenda with people around you that if they don't profess Christ, it is your job. It is your job to invite. It is your job to sell Jesus. It is your job to sell salvation. And then I was always like, I don't really want to do that. So then I felt guilty for not. Yeah. Anyway, I'm kind of close.
If you don't do relationship just right, God will turn his back on you just like he did on his son on the cross. Yeah.
So I kind of went from, and this for me has been now probably about a 4-year journey, but I kind of went from, all right, shut it all down, like shut it down, to then, and I'll like a lot of the mental health work that I've done in large part, my own just personal journey and learning about internal family systems and all this kind of stuff, that has been a huge, huge, huge aid for me to kind of stay connected to a God space when I was like in this mode of like, I don't want to have anything to do with the institution of church. But anyway, so mental health professionals have been so instrumental here. And then I kind of went to this space of like, I know there is divine love. I know now, like physicists are starting to identify like we can like energy and the thing that connects us all, the antimatter. I'm like, okay, there's definitely like a spiritual thing out there, but I can't imagine it being personally connected with me. But I'm kind of coming up to a point where I'm like maybe revisiting that a little bit. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like. If it's clear, it's like the stepping stones for me have been that like really becoming aware of how toxic and oppressive my faith practice was, even though I didn't think that it was. B, kind of like being aware of divinity and maintaining belief in that, but it's like you're kind of on your own in life, to now like, well, maybe there is some kind of personal interaction with divinity. So that's where I'm at right now.
I think that's so good, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's important for us to realize if somebody has a spouse that says, I'm going to treat you really well as long as you interrelate with me exactly as I demand you interrelate with me. And when you don't, not only am I willing to turn my back on you, but I may at some point set you on fire. That is not a healthy relationship. That is coercion. That is manipulation. That is narcissism, which is sometimes an overused word in this day. But that is the God we're taught, right? That you can't pray right now in need because you haven't read the Bible enough, or you haven't spent enough time in prayer, or this, that, or the other thing. And being released from the consequences of not living up to the expectation of dressing right, being right, reading enough Bible, believing the right way, going to the right church, going enough times to the right church, volunteering enough at the right church, all of those things that make us ashamed of ourselves, when we throw that away. And I believe, see the message that Jesus was saying, I'm not inviting you into a religion and a church. I'm inviting you to get reconnected to a divine goodness and love and wisdom that is bigger than you, but is very accessible to you to bring from heaven down to earth. Then you won't need rules anymore, because the relationship with other human beings is going to matter so much. And so I do think when we get the shame and the rules and this thin-skinned version of God out of the way, then a reclaiming of faith is available to us.
And I feel like I'm going to be very interested to start reading the Bible again through that lens. And I'm kind of like, I wonder what that's going to be like. We're going to need to probably move on to our last couple segments here, but I want to just make a final point here. Tori, or call Tori's comment out. So many loving and encouraging words. Tori says, I hope this is freeing for you, Paul. And I would just say, peeing is freeing. Springfield, Missouri. Peeing is freeing.
I do want to add to the conversation ultimately, like, I think the trauma that happened in my life, in my childhood household, childhood religion, didn't happen in spite of us being a Christian household. It happened because we were a Christian household in a particular, and I'm not saying all of Christianity does that, but I'm saying a Christianity that says, be good for God. You know, my parents certainly weren't allowed to seek therapeutic help from a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And so you have all the repression and shame and all those things. And so this stuff comes out in really unhealthy ways. And I just want to say to everyone, Jesus' actual, mantra and mission statement was set captives free. And so if it takes peeing on a wall to set you free, try not to get arrested doing it, but set yourself free from the shame and bondage of the principality of American Christianity, because I don't think it's Christian at all. It doesn't look anything like the Christ I read about in the Bible.
And what you just said is such a profound point that it probably is worth noting and saying, you know what, let's dive deeper into that for like a whole hour sometime. I think most sort of pedestrian evangelical Christian, American folk just sort of like doing the thing. It's what they were born into. They don't have any malice in their heart, but they're like, why are we like going so hard against this institution of the church? And like, certainly your inbox is full of people who express a lot of intense anger at the things that you say towards the church. And if what you just said is true, that the church itself, that the way this is being carried out, the way that the expression of Christ in the manner that we're seeing today with the religious political stuff going on is the cause of the abuse, that it's because of that. That's a really intense and big statement to say.
The cultural issue of pastors molesting parishioners and children is a systemic issue. It's not like, yes, that's just a bad person there, and that's a bad person there, and that's a bad person there. We got a lot of bad people in pastoral leadership in Christianity. And I don't think it's just one-offs of bad people. I think there is a systemic issue in American Christianity that makes this stuff become the outlet of the frustration, of the shame of original sin theology, that I think is bad theology. And then the desire to cover it up in the church, to save the good work of what we do is horrific and has created this systemic issue. And so it does have to be radically changed. And I think that's important. And so to go into the political side of this, and I think part of the blessing of Donald Trump is he has allowed the really dark heart of American Christianity to be exposed in this season.
And I mean, this is like, this is what I'm saying is I think most Protestants, and particularly, evangelical right, political right folks, I think they're really clear that there is systemic abuse in the liturgical or the Catholic Church, but to stop and be like, well, hold on. Maybe it's in our wing of Christendom as well. That is certainly not something that is talked about or understood in the narrative of the political right-wing church, evangelical church. So that's kind of a big deal. And I just wonder if others would see. I mean, you certainly hear enough examples of leaders, people in leadership, in this wing of the church that are doing the same kind of stuff. So
Mike Bickle of IHOP Kansas City, not International House of Pancakes, but International House of Prayer, is somebody we know of well. We didn't know personally, but we know of well in our line of Christendom. I think it's something like 19 women now have accused him. We're hearing even more horrific stories of how prophetic gifts were used to manipulate women into inappropriate, intimate relationships. And not enough Christians are horrified that the name of their religion is being put to it.
That's a very good way to put it. Not enough people are horrified.
Yeah.
And so then you have to stop and ask, so why aren't we horrified? Because we think it's not true, it's not real, or it's it's probably true, but we're just kind of sweep it away.
Yeah. I hear our little dog.
I know. Okay. We've had this whole journey while Paul's been on the road, the family dog and I, we are getting into relational space. I had no idea how needy this dog is. And now it's just me and him. And every night we had to play, we had to go for a walk, all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to need to go, but we should land on an inspirational note and just reflect on what are you thinking, Paul? What's inspiring you this week? And I'll share something on my end too.
I want to say two things really quickly that have inspired me. One is all but one of the churches that we've been to so far, 11 stops, have had a female senior leader of the church. And I love it. I love it so much. Yes, snap to that. I have just found that to be so inspiring. And I know you like the song, Put a Woman in Charge. And we'll have to play that for the people sometime. But I have loved meeting these women. And speaking of inspiring women, Michelle Obama blew it out of the park last night. I mean, Barack was right when he said, I'm the dumbest man in the world to be willing to follow Michelle Obama on a speaking stage. I just thought what she did was so amazing at just being, speaking like a normal person, saying, this is what normal Americans are. And Donald Trump is nothing like a normal American and doesn't want to bring a normal America to us. And she spoke of grieving for her mother the last time she was in Chicago before last night. And she tied that into, and many of us have been grieving for our country because we feel like the dreams of what this liberal democracy can be are over because of Trump, and that half of the country is divided behind this wanting to go back to a time when, and she didn't say this, my words, when white men controlled the world. And to tie that in and just how beautifully she told the story of, but now we're starting to believe that it doesn't have to be this way, that we can repudiate this right-wing darkness that just talks so horribly about America and about us as a people, and say, fuck no, that's not us. That's not us.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to tee off of that. What's inspiring to me over the last few weeks, actually, and then there was something last night that is just the weirdest thing that inspired me that I'll talk for a second about. But I think when you are in this sort of evangelical world, one of the big ahas for me in my deconstruction journey is the extent to which I carried an agenda all the time. And once that started crumbling, I did not realize the extent to which the agenda was between me and whoever was in front of me or around me. So if you were a colleague at work, if you were a close friend, if you were, whatever, there's a subtle thing you're always thinking about that is like, okay, I'm being nice to you. I'm being cool to you. I'm being connected with you, except for I'm not really, because I know that our eternal stories are different and you don't exactly believe the way I do. And so there is this very subtle, it's like cigarette smoke in a casino. It's just there all the time. And so for me, like the deconstructing thing and just being like, oh my God and love are in me. God and love are in every single person. So my experience with other people, from strangers at the grocery store to, family members who I've never really embraced because I always felt this distance, that is all falling away. And now I just get to love and connect with other human beings who carry that same loving spirit in them. So then take all of that and imagine this, millions of people who are being excited about a different future for our country, and that maybe there's a chance that we can continue to pursue this, the more perfect union. Now think of the DNC convention. Now think of, President Obama's and Michelle Obama's speech last night. What they are expressing is every bit as much an expression of divine love and connection as you would hear from the finest pulpit in any church on a Sunday. It's the same spirit. And we used to live of like, yeah, we're in it, not of it. But now we get to be in it, and we get to be connected with other people who have ambitions for their families just like we do. So I'm finding this whole sort of political season to be very, very inspirational. And in the past, I would have been like, on the outside looking in, passing judgment on stuff. So that's big I inspiration, lowercase I inspiration for me. Check this out. You know how sometimes like just a random song hits you and you're like, I got to listen to that. And you're just absolutely bawling your eyes out and you don't know why. I'm talking like, Paul, I know this is you. I know the songs that you're like, I had a revival last night listening to this song or that. And it's always some random whatever. My song last night was from Les Mis, Bring Him Home. Bring Him Home. Now, any of you like musical theater, like opera, or anything like that, or even if you haven't ever listened to this song, go listen to it. Pick any version of the song on YouTube and hear the heart of this song. It is this person who is praying to God, saying, basically, my adopted daughter loves this man so much who has gone off to war. He's young. I'll give my life for his. Let him live. Bring him home. Look, I'm crying even thinking about it. And that wrecked me last night. I must have listened to it 5 times. So that sort of heart for sacrificial love for other people, for imagining our people who are gathered in Chicago right now are like imagine that spirit of, we want to do right by people who aren't alive. We want to do right by people who are coming up after us. That's pretty damn divine in my view.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And Tori says in the comments to give you a podium. Definitely, my spouse can spin a speech. I tell you, I listened to 8 of your State of the City speeches, and you wanted to run through a wall for good when you were done hearing it. So yes, give her a podium.
Well, okay. And I'm not just trying to flatter you, but also I felt that way pretty much every Sunday that you preached. So
Mutual Admiration Society.
Yeah.
And so Michelle's speech was amazing last night, but her hair, did you see her hair? It was on fire. You got to see the hair.
It was, I mean, and how curated that anytime somebody there are few people in the entire world or the history of humanity that are as well known and significant as Barack and Michelle Obama. You know how well curated they are. So I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the ponytail planning meeting.
Yeah. I mean, that has to be an extension, right? I don't think her hair
Yeah. No, but it's like, I mean, just imagine the dialogue, like, well, we could do the bob, we could do the this. No, let's do the super long pony. Like, whatever that, like the fashion experts of the world, like getting involved to figure out how to style her. That's what I imagine. Maybe she was like, nah, cool, I'm just doing that. Maybe it was nothing like that, but I don't know. I'm curious what the backstory is.
And one other note from the DNC is I thought Ashley Biden's speech about her dad was just absolutely beautiful. I loved it. That was one of my favorite moments. So I just think there is, and I hope it continues. And Michelle Obama and and Barack Obama both last night, made the point of like, hey, we're having fun now, but it's going to get tough and we're going to have to keep fighting and going.
That was so wise for them to point that out, that it's like, well, and I'll say it this way. I once heard a person use this example of like a fighter pilot being interviewed on the news, and the fighter pilot was asked by the reporter, like, isn't it scary? Like, start drawing fire and like, whatever. And the pilot says, no, it's not scary. That's how you know you're over the target, is when you draw fire. So
yeah, and I love the idea of, and I think it was Michelle that said it last night, that we need, what would be great is if we have a complete repudiation of Trumpism in this election, that it's not just a tiny victory, but a huge victory.
Yes.
So that maybe some people on the right can come out of the haze that they're in and say, oh, wait, we don't have to bow down to this horrible person and horrible vision anymore, and save us from it. That would be beautiful.
This is me acting out Tori's emoji of the like green vomit coming out of someone's mouth. This is like we've got to purge America. We got to do this. Blech. So, all right. Well, we should put a pin in it next week. I'm excited because our plan is it's going to be your last-ish on the road this summer. And so we're going to like dedicate time to you going through your Christian nationalism presentation that you've been doing. At that point, it will be 14 of 15 cities probably, or 12. Right. So definitely plan on tuning in, downloading next week's episode. And please, please, please do us this favor. If you're listening right now, share this episode with one person, maybe somebody that you want to feel loved or encouraged today, or maybe somebody that you want to be really challenged and irritated today. Share this episode. Make sure and talk about us to all your friends, because your support makes a big difference. You can also subscribe to Ish. You can go to evangelicalish.com. You can subscribe. It costs you nothing. It just means you get emails from Paul that have some typos in them. And I'm not going to apologize. I don't like a typo. This is honestly, if we haven't gotten divorced over typos after 30 years, then maybe nothing can separate us. I don't know. Anyway, you're going to get some communication. You're going to know what's going on in our world. And that's all it takes if you subscribe. But would also be super great if you signed up for a little subscription every month, a support every month. And that's like $4.99 and makes a big difference for us as we $5.99. Sorry, I'm not pitching well tonight. But consider it. It's just a little tiny bit, but a little bit goes a long way in us being able to just do what we're doing here every week. So,
and make sure to follow my TikTok and Instagram. I'm thinking now, I'm not going to pee on the wall at the college. So whoever is listening from the government, I'm not going to do that. But maybe I'll, if I do something and it's significant, maybe I may even live stream from there. And so make sure you're plugged in so you'll know it's coming. Well, this was fun. Right. Thank you all for letting me vulnerably share, and for all the encouragement and love that, I feel better having kind of had this conversation. So thank you.
Good. Well, be sure to keep us updated tomorrow as you are traveling about town, and everyone can check that out on your various social media channels. And we will look forward to seeing everybody next week on Ish. Thanks, everyone. Bye. See you.